Hello again guys, and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about how I plan my camping trips. I'm going to give you a few tips on how I find a location, things like where I park the car and the gear that I choose for a particular trip. So it's a lovely day, so I've come out for a stroll along the Chesterfield Canal. This section's got plenty of locks. It's quite beautiful really. So today's video is a little bit different. It's a collaboration video with 3 other YouTubers who make outdoor videos like me. So first up we've got Becker from Wisconsin in the USA. So Dan's been backpacking since 2015. He's pretty new to YouTube, but his channel's grown really quickly over the last 6 months. A bit like me, Dan's a weekend backpacker and he vlogs his camping trips and does gear reviews. So next up we've got Devin from Backcountry Exposure. He's from Utah and he also describes himself as a weekend warrior. He spends most of his time in the Utah desert or in the high alpine mountains. Devin also vlogs his trips and likes to show us the gear that he uses. So finally we've got Paul from Pie on the Trail. He's originally an Essex boy from here in the UK, but he now lives in Helsinki in Finland. Paul has done some major backpacking in the USA, including the Appalachian Trail and the CDT in 2017. And he's going to be taking on the Pacific Crest Trail next year. So it's going to be really interesting to see how guys from different countries and environments plan their trips. So I'll put a link in the description below to their channels. I highly recommend you check them out. So let's cross this lock and I'll tell you about how I plan my trips. So as you've probably seen from my other YouTube videos, I do like to pitch my tent where there's a stunning view. So in the early days of my wild camping journey, I looked at inspiration from YouTubers like Heaton and Dean Reed, who made some fabulous YouTube videos and show some beautiful landscapes, which has inspired me to pitch my tent in some of those places. So this isn't a bad place, is it? Bet these put on some decent barbecues. So as you could probably guess, my first port of call for inspiration for places to camp is YouTube. So YouTube is a great source for finding somewhere to pitch your tent, along with other social media outlets such as Instagram and Facebook. You're never going to run out of ideas. So if Instagram's your thing, you definitely need to check out Paul's feed. I think his username's Ski Paul. Some of the pictures of places he's pitched his tent is phenomenal. You won't find any better in the UK. If Facebook's your thing, I highly recommend you checking out Wild Camping UK. There's literally hundreds of posts on there with great ideas for somewhere to pitch your tent. So once I've found a few suitable locations, I then have to think about how I'm going to get there and where I'm going to park the car. I usually just jump onto the computer and have a look on the OS maps and try and find a car park, or preferably a town where I can leave the car. I then jump on Google Earth and have a look at Street View to see if I can find somewhere suitable. So I found my location and somewhere to park the car. Now I pop back onto OS Maps and I print off a copy of the map for the area. I also plot my route to see how far it is, and I download an offline map for my Viewranger app, so I've got GPS as well. So the next stage for me is planning when I'm going to go. I may need to book some time off work or set aside a free weekend so I can go camping. So a week before my trip, I need to find out what the weather's going to be like. So I start off by going on the Met Office app on my phone and checking out what the weather's like for that region. If I'm camping up high on a mountain or on a summit, then I also check out the mountain weather forecast, because the weather up on a mountain is completely different to what it is in the towns and villages. I need to consider, is it going to be snowy, windy, or even if it's going to be really warm. This helps me decide what equipment I need to take. So if I'm going to be pitching up somewhere where it's a little bit windy, or maybe on a summit like Helvellyn in November, then I'm going to choose something like the Hilleberg Solo for my tent. But if I'm walking 20 miles, then I may choose something a little bit lighter weight, but then find a more suitable pitch for the tent. And I also have to consider if it's going to be a social camping trip. That way I tend to take a few more beers and half a ton of beef. The equipment that I will take on a trip depends vastly depending on things like the weather, the temperature and how far I'm travelling. It's really important to make sure that your shelter is going to be suitable and that you're going to be warm enough in the night. So a good tent, air mattress and sleeping bag are the top 3 things on my list. Depending on how long you're going for, it's also very important that you've got enough water and food for the trip. If you're camping for several days, then you're usually best off taking some kind of filter so you can pick up fresh water on the go. As a rule of thumb, a male should have about 2,500 calories, but bear in mind if you're doing some kind of strenuous exercise like mountain climbing, you're going to burn more calories. So all that's left really is to get to your destination. Try and ensure that you arrive at your camping area pretty late in the day. The UK Wild Camping Code says that you should pitch late and leave early. You don't want to be setting up at midday. I usually try to arrive around an hour to an hour and a half before sunset. That way it gives me a little bit of time to film some video and to find somewhere suitable and flat to pitch the tent. Oh, and hopefully with a really good view. Final note, I'm going to talk about safety. When going on a camping trip, you should always tell someone close to you where you're going. It's always a good idea to give them the location of where you're going to park the car and where you're going to pitch your tent. I also recommend sending a GPX route of how you're going to get up to your camping spot. It's also important to tell them what time you're going to be back and give them a call when you're back at the car. That way if you don't check in, they can call for the cavalry. And a little bit of advice if maybe you're new to camping, don't pick somewhere that is too difficult or too far a walk back should you need to tap out. So I've almost reached the end of my walk, and that's basically it for the video too. It's quite straightforward how I plan my camps, and if you follow some of these tips you won't go far wrong. So I hope you found this video useful. I'm looking forward to see what the other guys do for planning their trips. Highly recommend you check out their channels. So don't forget to do all the good stuff like hitting the thumbs up button and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.